Every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Some stories begin with questions, some begin with loss. All of them are rooted in love and the search for connection. This is Janet Monroe, and this is Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, a podcast where real stories take root and grow. Because the more we share, the more we understand, and understanding helps us grow. Now, here's Janet Monroe.
Hello, and welcome to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories. My name is Janet, and I am your host. Today is not about a new story. It's about gratitude for 10 incredible episodes. For every one of you who has subscribed, followed, or shared, and most of all, for the brave people who trusted me to share their stories. When I started this podcast just 2 months ago, I was nervous. I had no idea what I was doing, just a deep desire to help others know that they are not alone in the world of adoption. Every week I've learned something new. Every week I've been reminded that there are countless voices waiting to be heard and that telling these stories matter. So today let's take a walk back through the first 10 episodes together. So the first episode was my story. One of the moments that still brings me to tears is when I first heard my son Dwayne's voice after 47 years. He told me 3 things during that first conversation, and those words will live in my heart forever. Roots and Branches started with my story, but it has always been about so much more. It's been about creating a place where adoption stories can be shared honestly and where no one has to feel alone. I know when I first spoke to Dwayne, my world exploded when he told me I had 3 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. But then when we talked more and as time went on, he found he had a brother and sister through me, but he got 6 brothers and sisters through his dad's side of the family. And everyone is affected. The oldest of his brothers and sisters, Jason, was no longer the oldest child. He was, all of a sudden, he was a middle child. And that just affects the way everybody thinks when everybody comes together. But family remains family, no matter what. First, it was all the memories that I had repressed for so long coming forward. Second was that feeling of loss for all that we had missed in our separate lives. And thirdly was the feeling of guilt that no matter what he said hung in the air. In episode 2, we spoke to Dwayne's mother, adoptive mom, Mama T, about nature versus nurture. Mama T shared a poem with me that talks about the 2 different kinds of love that come together in adoption. And it's true. Dwayne had her kindness, her compassion, and her giving heart. And from my side, his curiosity and his entrepreneurial spirit. He was the perfect blend. I will be forever grateful that she loved him so deeply and raised him to be the incredible man he became. He came into our lives shortly after I lost my husband, my kids, their dad. A year later, we lost my dad, their grandfather. And then the following year, in the same week that all these two other deaths had happened, we found Dwayne. He became the older brother. He became the man in their life that they needed at the time. He would listen to them and share his knowledge with them.
Okay.
The legacy of an adopted child. Once there were two women who never knew each other. One you do not remember, the other you call mother. Two different lives shaped to make your one. One became your guiding star, the other became your sun. The first one gave you life, and the second taught you to live it. The first gave you a need for love, the second was there to give it. One gave you a nationality, the other gave you a name. One gave you a talent, the other gave you an aim. One gave you emotions, the other calmed your fears. One saw your first sweet smile, the other prayed for a child, and her hopes were not denied. And now you ask me, through the years, the age-old question, unanswered through the years, heredity or environment? Which are you the product of? Neither, my darling, neither, just two different kinds of love. Episode 3 is my children, Jill and Ken. This episode will always hold a special place in my heart. Jill and Ken meeting their big brother, the brother they never knew they had, was pure joy. After the years of loss and grief, Dwayne brought light back into our family. That week, with all of its highs and lows, showed me that timing really is everything. I enjoyed this clip because it was my family and we were talking and it was remembering Dwayne and just letting our feelings out and knowing that he'll always be in our hearts and being so grateful for the 6 years that we had. You know, there's longevity in my family. My dad was 97 when he passed away. His sister just passed recently at the age of 101. And I kept telling Dwayne that he had a long life ahead of him. But for some reason he didn't believe that. He said, no, I'm going to die in my 50s. And I said, no, look for it. He said, well, I'm going to have to replan everything. But he was right. He was 53 when he passed. And it was by an accident, and no one can control accidents.
And I believe we all hugged once the door opened.
Yeah.
And then we started off our morning with a Caesar.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's exactly as I recall. And I remember, the immediate memory was us walking in the door, making our acquaintances with Dwayne and Kristen at the time, and starting that relationship. But the immediate memory that I have is how much is this guy like Mom in the entertaining aspect of things, where he had the Mott's tomato juice out on the counter already. Who's ready for a Caesar? to kind of break the ice and initiate that conversation, and immediately felt welcomed into his home.
My first guest outside of my family was in episode 4. I'd met Shane on a business platform, and we started talking, and I brought forward my dreams for this Roots and Branches, and he said to me, oh, I have an adoption story that I would love to tell. And I thought, great, this is my start. It isn't just my story that's going to be told, that someone else is willing to tell theirs. So Shane stepped forward, and he broke my heart and opened my eyes. Here was a father doing everything right, loving his son, fighting for him, but he still lost him because of a broken system. What stayed with me most was his advice to other fathers. Document everything. Just like the Boy Scouts, be prepared. Every call, every text, every visit. One day your child will come looking for you, and when that day comes, you'll be able to show them the truth, that you never stopped trying and you never stopped loving them. With everything documented, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to convince them that you looked. You don't have to convince them that you cared. You've got everything there, and you can just say, read this. And when they go through that and they see everything that you've done, everything that you tried, and that you were denied at every turn, they'll just know that you love them. And the other thing that comes to mind out of Shane's story is that there is so little support for unwed fathers. The courts favor the mothers. But if you have a woman who wants to put the child up for adoption, but the dad wants to take care of the child, they should have that right to step in and do what's right. I know that Shane is really looking forward to when his son turns 18 and they can actually meet and have conversations and go through everything that he did.
And I remember telling her after she, quote unquote, won getting the adoption, I let her know that I said, just so you know, when he's 18 years old, no matter what you do, he's going to find me and he's going to seek me out. Because she has all control to be able to make it so he could never talk to me again, technically, right? So I said, I don't care what you do, but just so you know, I'm going to give him everything. And I'm going to let him make his own decision. And he's going to have every single text. He's going to have every single email. He's going to have every single one of the contracts that I wrote. He's going to have every single one of the contracts that you let your lawyers draft. He's going to have all the different audio that has all the communications between us, hearing come out of your mouth agreements where we were apparently coming in alignment and trying to think of the best of him. And he's going to also see the document, and he's going to see the adoption paperwork, and he's going to know the story. He's going to have it all there, and I'm going to have the witnesses. I said, if he turns 18 years old and you are not actually doing what's best for him, then he is going to resent you for the remaining 80 years of his life.
Next, we have Michelle's story, which turned out to be a two-part episodes. The first episode was about Victoria. Michelle's journey as an adopted mom is powerful. In part 1, we learned about how her daughter Victoria, who had already been through 18 foster homes by the age of 4, the challenges they faced, and the love and stability that Michelle and Tom brought is a true testament to what it means to fight for a child. And then years later, when Victoria wasn't able to care for her own daughter, it was Michelle who stepped in and adopted Addie. That kind of unconditional love changes generations. I've personally known Michelle for the last 12 years, maybe more. And she just has this heart of gold. Willing to give and help all those in need. By telling her story about Victoria, it talks about how Victoria was a closed adoption. They had no contact with Victoria's birth mom. So there was no way of learning more about a medical history or medical conditions. And it was later on through the adoption when she was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. And that had given her some brain damage, which resulted in her not being able to look after her own daughter. Victoria had an attachment problem. And can you blame her after 18 foster homes in 4 years? Michelle and Tom decided not to have biological children, their own children, because of how it would affect Victoria. And that is selflessness.
But I truly believe that the biggest thing that has affected her life is that because of the struggle she had as a baby and as a young child, she was moved 18 times from when she was 18 months to when she was 3. 18 months, 18 times, because she was moved back and forth, back home, back to foster care, back home, back to foster care, to different homes all the time, to failed adoptions, etc. The biggest thing that has affected her life and has affected who she is attachment reactive disorder. It means she didn't attach properly to someone, so she has trouble with trust.
Part 2 of Michelle's story brought something entirely new: the beauty of an open adoption. She shared what it was like to adopt Andrew and Abby and to build a relationship with their birth family. But what amazed me most was her commitment to bonding with Abby, even inducing lactation so she could breastfeed her newborn daughter. When Michelle and Tom decided to adopt a second child, it took them a while, but they found Andrew. And because it was an open adoption, they developed a relationship with Andrew's mother. A couple of years later, Andrew's mother found that she was pregnant again. And she asked Michelle and Tom if they would adopt Abby. So therefore, Michelle got that chance to be around Abby's mom through the whole pregnancy, bonding with Abby. And when she was able to take her daughter home from the hospital and breastfeed her, that so amazed me that you could do that. And that was 20 years ago, so imagine what it is like today. It must be a lot easier for that. She talked about taking natural herbs and some medication in order to be able to do that. That's love in action, and something I'll never forget. And when we talk about Abby, there's more to this story. Abby's dad was Jamaican, and Abby was black. So that became an interracial family. And at that point in time, 20 years ago, it was not a huge factor in the small town that they were growing up in. So there was some conflict that had to be faced at that time as well. But when you hear Michelle's stories, both of them, you'll feel her passion, her love for her children, her desire to help them, and just to teach them to give back. And that passion just comes through.
So during her whole pregnancy, she had planned for her to come to us. I was able to breastfeed her. There's this was 19 years ago, so there's probably even new technology then, but that seemed amazing to me. I took medications that women take who are not producing enough milk. They were herbs and stuff, and it was an anti-ulcer medication and herbs, and drank a lot and ate oatmeal. Oatmeal, I guess, is something. I couldn't drink beer. I hate beer. And I had to pump every couple of hours for the 6 weeks leading up to her moving in.
Getting into episode 7. Episode 7 is Angel's story. It was raw and it was real. Angel was adopted by her grandmother. Her sense of identity shifted again and again. She was originally the granddaughter. And then the grandmother would start in, this is my granddaughter, but now she's my daughter. Angel didn't know who she was. Then she went from being a sister to being an aunt. She endured unthinkable pain, including sexual violence. And though it doesn't compare, it is similar to my own experience with giving birth at a young age. It was something that no one spoke about after the incident. It was something that people felt if you ignore it, it'll go away. If you don't talk about it, if you don't bring it forward, it's gone. But it's always there, always in our subconscious. What inspires me most about Angel is her resilience. She has worked so hard to heal, to grow, and to trust the process. Which is also the title of her book, by Raina Nativa. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Trusting the process.
I feel like if we talk about it, if we tell, or if we teach our children to talk about it and tell, then we can rehabilitate these people. Because 9 times out of 10, the person who is doing the molestation, something has happened to them.
Now we're entering Kristen's story. Kristen, I met on the same platform as I met Shane. And she talked about adoption. And what drew me to Kristen was that she had the same passion as Michelle and Mama T had for raising their children. For facing the challenges and raising children that are going to make a difference in this world. So part 1 of Kristen's story is Kylie's story. It shows Kristen's love for her daughters shines through every word she speaks. In part 1, she shares Kylie's story, adopted from an orphanage in China, and the unique challenges that came with that experience. But what stands out most is her fierce, unconditional love. The kind of love that says, you are mine, no matter what. I remember Kristen talking about Kylie, and when they went back to China to bring Allie home, Kylie thought that they were going to leave her there and trade her in for the new one. Kylie was happy where she was. and didn't want to go back to China. So when she found out that Allie was coming home with them to be a sister to her, that just made a huge difference. After I talk about each of these episodes, we're putting in a little clip from them, so that gives you the opportunity to decide whether you'd like to learn more about each story and listen to each story, or just if you.
When Kylie went for her physical, just to show how stubborn she was, we took her down to the medical office, and they do some very basic things. They lay them on the table, they check a few things, the doctor listens to their heart, and then they do a hearing test, which involves shaking a rattle behind their ear and seeing if they turn their head. Something about that primitive. Well, they tried it on Kylie several times, and she wouldn't budge when they shook the rattle. So they decided that they thought she may be deaf. So they came to us with Maggie, our facilitator, and the doctors, and Maggie said, well, the doctors think that she might not be able to hear. And by this time, I've already had her for a few days, all of us. So my parents are there, my husband's there. They come to us and say, we think she might be deaf. Do you want us to find you another baby? Well, we're already in love at this point. And my mom's like, I know sign language, we can figure this out. So we told them, no, we don't want you to call in, go get another baby for us. We're going to take her whether she's deaf or not. And then we spent the next week and a half of our trip to China walking up behind her, trying to scare her to see if she could hear the noises. But we really felt strongly that she wasn't deaf. She was just really stubborn. But that just goes to show you, the survival skill that she learned. At that point, she was 10 months old, and she had already learned just strict obedience. Do not, don't let them see you sweat. And that's what got her through the 10 months, surviving in the orphanage. So that was really interesting.
Like the little clips so that you can get a taste of what Roots and Branches is all about. And then in part 2 of Kristen's story, she introduces us to Allie. Adopted through China's special needs program, Allie came from a foster care environment, and the difference that made in her early attachments is remarkable. Again, Kristen's passion and advocacy for her girls reminds us all what makes a great adoption story. The unconditional love and willingness to meet each child exactly where they are. Kristen brought Allie home, and they had to go through numerous surgeries to correct the cleft palate that Allie was born with. When you see the picture of her on the thumbnail.
She didn't really like to read, but she pretty much enjoyed anything else, like puzzles, Legos, all those kind of things. She loved the pets, even though her sister kind of claimed the dog. She always tried to get the dog's attention. And just a great little responsible kid. And I'll tell you, when she went to start kindergarten, I remember getting up in the morning. She had already picked out her clothes for the first day of school, and she's only 5 years old. So I come out of my room, and she's already downstairs dressed. She is making her own lunch at 5 years old. She's packing her lunch bag for school, which her sister, I don't think, had made a sandwich to date at that point. So it was really impressive that Allie was making herself a sandwich, putting a banana in the bag, taking a little fruit cup, I think. She had it all planned out herself, and I was getting up to go make her lunch, and she had already done it. So that just gives you a little indication about how responsible she is. She's a big list maker. She plans everything out.
And then we get to the 10th episode, Sherry's story. I've known Sherry for over 20 years. At least we figured that out. And I never knew she was adopted. She happened to be on Facebook, read what I was doing, and sent me a text saying, I'm adopted. And that started this conversation. We met, we had lunch, and then I was able to sit side by side with Sherry right here and have a conversation with her about her adoption. Her story is one that moves between heartbreak and hope. She shared some hard truths about her childhood, but also the strength she found in her faith. Her line, "Don't be a victim," is one I think about often. And then there's the joy of her 52-year marriage, a love story that makes you smile. Tell you that clip from that definitely puts a smile on your face. Today as a minister, she gives back every single day, guiding others as they navigate their own journeys. She has a strength and a resilience that just shows, and a passion in the way she speaks. And it shows that she was not a victim of her past, that her past did not define her, that she has made her own journey and she's traveling her own road. So how has your adoption experiences shaped the way for you to show up for others in their time of need?
Oh, it's the gift. It's the silver lining.
And what messages would you want other adoptees, especially those who had difficult adoptions, to hear?
Don't be a victim. I would say don't be a victim of your circumstances. Me being a reverend.
So to every single person who has liked, commented, subscribed, or simply listened, thank you. This community is growing because of you. Every message you send, every share you make, tells me that these stories are making a difference. And I've learned, I don't know if you know, but you can comment on a YouTube video. If you watch the video and then go down below, there'll be a place where you can put a comment in. And I would appreciate those comments because they will come back to me. And I have to say to the storytellers, you are the heart of Roots and Branches. Thank you for trusting me with your most personal moments. Thank you for your honesty, your courage, and your generosity. You have no idea how many lives you've touched. And this is just the beginning. Brian's story was released last week. Now, Brian, you might recognize his voice as he does the intro and the outro for all of the full-length episodes of Roots and Branches. His story explores the pain of prejudice and the deep depression that followed the loss of his child and his incredible journey toward healing. Soon we'll share Ron's story about finding his mom on Craigslist. And then we have Peter from Australia, where a 2.5-year search led to a family he never knew he had. And there's a second Sherry who talks about the difference between raising biological children and adoptive children, and what love looks like in a blended family. These stories are as unique as the people who live them, and I can't wait to keep sharing them with you. If you connected with today's story, please subscribe, comment it, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can listen to all episodes at rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com. I'm Janet. Thank you for joining me in breaking the silence and stigma around adoption.
Thank you for tuning in to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, where every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Got an adoption story you want to tell? Want to learn more about adoption stories? Then visit rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com.